Bumpy Johnson let Frank Lucas keep $50,000 he stole in 1964, but made him do one thing that changed him forever. October 12, 1964, Monday morning. Frank Lucas woke up at 6 with his stomach in knots. He'd been awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what he'd done, thinking about what would happen when Bumpy found out, because Bumpy always found out. Frank got dressed, walked to the kitchen, made coffee he couldn't drink, sat at the table, waited. At 7:30, his phone rang. He knew who it was before he answered. Bumpy's voice, calm, quiet. "Come to my office, now." Frank hung up, took a deep breath, put on his jacket, walked out into the cold October morning. The streets were empty, too early for most people. Frank walked slowly, trying to figure out what to say, how to explain, whether to lie or tell the truth. By the time he reached Small's Paradise, he'd decided. He'd tell the truth. Lying to Bumpy was worse than whatever Bumpy would do to him for stealing. He climbed the stairs to Bumpy's office. The door was open. Bumpy was sitting behind his desk, reading the newspaper, a cup of coffee steaming next to him. He didn't look up when Frank walked in, just said, "Close the door. Sit down." Frank did, sat in the chair across from Bumpy's desk, the same chair he'd sat in dozens of times before, but this time felt different, heavier. Bumpy folded the newspaper, set it aside, looked at Frank. His face showed nothing, no anger, no disappointment, just calm observation. "Frank, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly." Frank nodded. "Yes, sir." "Did you take $50,000 from the collection last week?" Frank's throat went dry. He'd known this was coming, known Bumpy would figure it out, but hearing the question out loud made it real, made it impossible to pretend it hadn't happened. Frank looked Bumpy in the eyes. "Yes, I took it." Bumpy didn't move, didn't blink, just kept looking at Frank. "Where is it now?" "In my apartment, hidden. All of it." "Yes, sir, all 50,000. Bumpy leaned back in his chair. "Why did you take it?" Frank had prepared an answer for this, had rehearsed it in his head all night. But now, sitting across from Bumpy, the answer felt hollow, empty. He said it anyway. "Because I needed it. My rent is due. My mother needs help back in North Carolina. I've been sending her money, but it's not enough. I thought if I took a little, just once, I could catch up, get ahead, then pay it back." Bumpy listened, didn't interrupt. When Frank finished, Bumpy said, "How long have you been working for me?" 3 years. "In those 3 years, how much have I paid you?" Frank did the math in his head. "You pay me $75 a week. That's almost $12,000 total. Where did it all go?" Frank looked down. "Rent, food, clothes, helping my mother, going out. Normal stuff." Bumpy said, "You make $12,000 in 3 years, and you still need to steal 50,000? Frank didn't know what to say. The truth was he'd been spending money as fast as he made it. New suits, new shoes, drinking, women, trying to look like he was somebody, trying to keep up with the other guys who worked for Bumpy. He'd been living like he was rich when he wasn't, and when the bills started piling up, when his mother called asking for more help, Frank had panicked, saw the 50,000 sitting there during a collection, and took it, thinking nobody would notice, thinking he could get away with it. Bumpy stood up, walked to the window, looked out at 135th Street. Frank sat there, waiting for Bumpy to tell him to leave, to never come back, or worse. After a long silence, Bumpy said, "Frank, you know what I should do right now." "Yes, sir." "I should take you downstairs, put a bullet in your head, leave you in the alley, make an example out of you so everyone knows what happens when you steal from me." Frank's hands were shaking. He gripped the arms of the chair to keep them still. "Yes, sir, I know. But I'm not going to do that." Frank looked up. "What?" Bumpy turned around. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not even going to take the money back. Frank didn't understand. Boss, I don't. Bumpy held up his hand. Let me finish. You took $50,000. You thought you could hide it, thought I wouldn't notice, but you were wrong. I noticed the same day. I know exactly when you took it. I know where you hid it. I know everything. So why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you say something sooner? Because I wanted to see what you'd do. Whether you'd spend it, whether you'd run, whether you'd come to me and confess. Bumpy sat back down. You didn't spend it, you didn't run, but you didn't confess either. I had to call you here. That tells me something. What? That you're not a thief. You're just scared, and scared men make mistakes. Frank didn't know what to say. Bumpy continued. I'm gonna let you keep the $50,000. Frank's eyes went wide. What? You're gonna keep the money? But there's a condition. What condition? Bumpy opened his desk drawer, pulled out a piece of paper, a pen, slid them across the desk to Frank. Write down 10 names, 10 families in Harlem who need help, people you know, people who are struggling, people who can't pay rent or medical bills or can't afford food. Frank picked up the pen, started thinking. Bumpy said, not people who work for me, not people in the game, regular people, honest people, people who are trying to survive and failing. Frank wrote, his mother's neighbor in North Carolina who had 6 kids and a husband who'd been injured at work, a woman on his block whose daughter needed surgery, an old man who ran a newsstand and was about to lose his apartment, a single mother with 3 kids who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent, a veteran who'd come back from Korea with no legs and no job. Frank kept writing. 10 names, 10 addresses. When he finished, he slid the paper back to Bumpy. Bumpy looked at the list, nodded. Good. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to take that $50,000. You're going to divide it into 10 envelopes, $5,000 each, and you're going to deliver those envelopes to these 10 families, personally, in the next 7 days. Frank stared at Bumpy. You want me to give away the money I stole? Yes. But why? Bumpy leaned forward. Because I want you to understand something. Money you steal doesn't belong to you. It belongs to guilt. It sits in your apartment. It weighs on your conscience. It makes you paranoid. It ruins you. But money you give away? That's different. That transforms you. Frank said, I don't understand. You will. Bumpy stood up. Go home, get the money, divide it, deliver it, and when you're done, come back here and tell me what you learned. Frank stood, walked to the door, stopped, turned around. Boss, why are you doing this? Why not just kill me or take the money back? Bumpy smiled, slightly. Because I see something in you, Frank, something worth saving, but you don't see it yet. You think you're a thief. You think you're someone who takes. I'm going to show you that you're someone who gives. Now go. Frank left, walked home, pulled the $50,000 out from under his mattress where he'd hidden it, where he'd been looking at it every night, feeling sick, feeling guilty, feeling trapped. He divided the money into 10 envelopes, $5,000 each, wrote a name on each envelope. Nothing else, no note, no explanation, just the money and a name. Day 1, Frank went to the first address, a 3rd-floor apartment in a building on 143rd Street. A woman named Dorothy Harris, 52 years old, worked as a maid. Her daughter had been in a car accident 3 months ago. Medical bills were destroying her. Frank knocked on the door. Dorothy answered, looked at him suspiciously. Yes? Can I help you? Frank handed her the envelope. This is for you. She took it, opened it, saw the money. Her face went pale. What is this? Where did this come from? Frank said, it's from someone who wants to help. That's all I can tell you. But this is $5,000. I can't accept this. I don't even know you. You don't have to know me. Just take it. Use it for your daughter." Dorothy started crying, put her hand over her mouth, then looked at Frank. "Who sent you?" Frank shook his head. "I can't say. Just know that someone cares." He walked away, left her standing in the doorway holding the envelope, crying. Frank felt something he hadn't expected. Relief. Not guilt, not fear. Relief. Day 2, Frank went to the second address. An old man named James Carter, 73 years old, ran a newsstand on 125th Street for 40 years. His landlord was evicting him, raising the rent from $60 a month to $200. James couldn't afford it. Frank found him at the newsstand, walked up, bought a newspaper, then handed him the envelope. James looked confused. "What's this?" "Open it." James did. His hands started shaking when he saw the money. "Son, where did this come from?" Frank said, "Someone heard you were in trouble, wanted to help. But I don't know anyone with this kind of money." "You do now." James sat down on his stool, stared at the money, then looked up at Frank. "Tell whoever sent this that they saved my life." Frank nodded. "I will." He walked away, felt that same relief again, stronger this time. Day 3, a single mother named Rita Johnson, 3 kids, worked 2 jobs, still behind on rent, about to be evicted. Frank gave her the envelope. She opened it, collapsed to her knees, started sobbing. Frank helped her up. She grabbed his hand, wouldn't let go, kept saying thank you over and over. Frank felt something break inside him, something he'd been carrying for weeks, the weight of the stolen money, the guilt. It was dissolving, being replaced by something else, something lighter. Day 4, a veteran named Robert Lee, lost both legs in Korea, couldn't work, couldn't afford his wheelchair repairs. Frank gave him the envelope. Robert opened it, looked at Frank, saluted him. Frank saluted back, walked away with tears in his eyes. Days 5, 6, and 7, Frank delivered the remaining 6 envelopes. Each time, the same reaction: shock, gratitude, tears. And each time, Frank felt lighter, felt cleaner. By the 7th day, when he delivered the last envelope, Frank felt like a different person. The guilt was gone. The paranoia was gone. The weight of what he'd done had been transformed into something else, something he couldn't quite name. He went back to Bumpy's office. Bumpy was waiting, sitting behind his desk, same position as before. "Did you deliver all 10? "Yes, sir, all of them." "How do you feel?" Frank sat down, thought about it, then said, "I feel like I did something right for the first time in my life." Bumpy nodded. "Good. Now tell me what you learned." Frank took a deep breath. "I learned that stealing doesn't make you rich. It makes you poor, because you lose something more valuable than money. You lose yourself." Bumpy said, "What else?" "I learned that giving feels better than taking, that helping people is more powerful than hurting them." "What else?" Frank hesitated, then said, "I learned that you could have killed me, or taken the money back, but instead you gave me a chance to become someone better. And I don't know why you did that, but I'm grateful." Bumpy leaned back in his chair. "Frank, I did it because I know something about you that you don't know about yourself yet." "What's that?" "You're not a criminal. You're scared. You're desperate. You're trying to survive, but deep down, you're not someone who wants to take. You're someone who wants to build. I saw that 3 years ago when I hired you. I saw it in the way you work, the way you treat people, the way you carry yourself. But you didn't see it. You thought you had to steal to get ahead. I needed to show you that's not true." Frank said, "So the $50,000 was a test?" "Yes, to see if you'd keep it, or if you'd do the right thing when given the choice. And you did the right thing, not because I forced you, because I gave you the opportunity." Bumpy stood up, walked around the desk, put his hand on Frank's shoulder. "From now on, you work directly for me. No more collections, no more low-level work. You're going to help me run things. You're going to learn how this business really works. Not the stealing, not the violence, the strategy, the relationships, the long game." Frank looked up. "Why? Why are you giving me this chance?" "Because you just proved you're worth it." Over the next 4 years, Frank worked directly under Bumpy, learned everything: how to negotiate, how to manage people, how to build systems, how to stay invisible, how to protect the neighborhood, how to earn respect without demanding it. And Frank never forgot the $50,000. never forgot the 10 families. In fact, every few months Frank would go back, check on them, see how they were doing. Dorothy's daughter recovered. James kept his newsstand. Rita got a better job. Robert got his wheelchair fixed. All of them remembered the stranger who'd given them money when they needed it most. None of them knew it was Frank. In 1968, when Bumpy died, Frank took over, built his empire, made millions, and even though Frank eventually made mistakes, even though he got arrested and lost everything, he never forgot what Bumpy had taught him that day, that the money you steal weighs you down, but the money you give lifts you up. In 1975, when Frank was arrested, when the feds seized his assets, when everything fell apart, Frank thought about those 10 families, wondered if they were okay, wondered if they remembered the envelopes, the money, the stranger who'd helped them. In prison, Frank started helping other inmates, not with money, he didn't have any, but with advice, with encouragement, with the same thing Bumpy had given him, a second chance. When Frank got out in 1981, he was broke, had nothing, but he went back to Harlem, found some of those families, checked on them. Dorothy was still there. Her daughter was married now, had kids. James had retired, sold the newsstand, but he was alive, comfortable. Rita's kids had grown up. One of them was in college. They didn't recognize Frank, didn't know he was the one who'd helped them 17 years ago, but Frank knew, and that was enough.
In 2007, when Frank was being interviewed for American Gangster, the reporter asked him about his biggest regret. Frank thought about it, said, "My biggest regret is that I didn't learn Bumpy's lesson fast enough. I learned how to give, but I also learned how to take, and the taking destroyed me." The reporter asked, "What lesson are you talking about?" Frank said, "In 1964, I stole $50,000 from Bumpy. He could have killed me. Instead, he made me give it away to 10 families who needed it. That was the moment I learned that money isn't just currency, it's responsibility, it's power. And if you use it wrong, it destroys you. But if you use it right, it transforms you." The reporter said, "Do you think you used it right?" Frank was quiet for a long time, then said, "For a while, I did. I helped people. I protected the neighborhood. I built something. But then I forgot. I started taking again, started thinking only about myself, and I lost everything." The reporter asked, "If you could go back, what would you do differently?" Frank said, "I'd remember those 10 families. I'd remember what it felt like to give instead of take. I'd remember that Bumpy didn't punish me for stealing. He gave me a chance to become someone better. And I'd hold on to that instead of letting it go." Frank Lucas died in 2019, 88 years old. In his final years, he spent his time speaking to young people, trying to steer them away from the life he'd lived. And every time he spoke, he told the story of the $50,000, the 10 families, the lesson Bumpy had taught him. He'd say, "I stole $50,000 when I was young, and my boss could have killed me. But instead, he made me give it away, made me see that the money I'd stolen wasn't mine, it was a burden, and the only way to lift that burden was to give it to people who needed it more than I did. That lesson saved my life, not from Bumpy, from myself." Some of the kids listened, some didn't, but Frank kept telling the story because he knew that somewhere in some kid's head, the story would stick, would make a difference, would show them that there's a choice between taking and giving, between stealing and helping, between being someone who destroys and being someone who builds. And that choice, that moment when you decide who you want to be, is the most important moment of your life. Frank had made that choice twice, once in 1964 when Bumpy gave him a second chance, and once in 1975 when he'd lost everything and had to rebuild. The first time, he'd chosen right. The second time, he'd chosen wrong. But he'd learned. And learning, even when it comes too late, is still worth something. Because the lesson doesn't die with you. It lives on in the people you tell, in the kids who listen, in the ones who make a different choice because you showed them there was one to make.
Bumpy Johnson had given Frank Lucas $50,000 and a lesson. The money was gone, but the lesson lasted a lifetime.